The Mountain West and the Pac-12 cannot agree on very much right now, but what both conferences can agree on is that they need to expand. It is pivotal for their survival. I got a guest on today. Let's talk about it. This is the Let's Run podcast. Folks, welcome back to the show. Grateful to have you. Grateful to just be back on air. It's been a little weird. UNLV's schedule has made my upload schedule a little rough. But thank you so much for checking out the channel. Please do like this video, subscribe. We're going to talk about how these conferences can expand their paths, the obstacles, and I'm once again thrilled to have on the Collegiate Athletics Advocate. One of these times I'm going to get your name down. I'm going to practice the tongue twister in front of a mirror. But man, thanks so much for jumping on the show again. You become a regular on the Let's Run podcast, and it's just a thrill to have you because I think our conversations are generally some of the most fun that I have. So thanks for coming on, man. How you doing?
Oh, doing all right. Appreciate that. That's high praise, Jason. Appreciate that. It's always a pleasure being on here. I think it brings some light to my day and my week. I mean, what else am I supposed to do with these 4 days in between games now, 5 days before we get Maction in a couple of weeks. So
yeah, Maction will be nice to kind of split up the week, and then for me at least, because I'm kind of a basketball guy, the NBA gets going, and I'm just in heaven until basically May. So life's good. But dude, we have an awesome conversation today. You know, we actually, and I'll take you guys behind the curtain a little bit. He and I actually kind of had a pre-podcast yesterday where we talked this through, and we know what we're going to both talk about. We have both points that we want to hit. We have some new data that we're going to talk about. I want to talk about first, and please do make sure, by the way, that you're subscribed to his channel. The Advocate, as I'm going to call him, is an awesome channel. I really like everything he puts in. They're really high content videos and high effort videos, I should say. So please make sure you subscribe to his channel. And let's talk about Mountain West expansion first. We'll do Mountain West first and then Pac-12 second. You recently did a video breaking down kind of Mountain West expansion topics. And there was a name that you talked about at the very end, but that wasn't on your list of Mountain West schools that were going to expand. Tarleton State. Now, obviously, I think since you've recorded that video, they've had a very good football season. So there's been a little bit more, it's just one football season, but it's been good data. They beat Army, who's a good football team. How are you feeling about Tarleton State? Have your thoughts changed a little bit since that video? And what's good and bad about them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely context is everything. I guess if I had the information that I'd had, maybe the shock wouldn't have been on my face when I was watching them beat Army in overtime at Michie Stadium in upstate New York. What a game. Tarleton, I think where I've been on the fence before really has to be just, it didn't seem like they were ready. And now I think that maybe they listened to my podcast and they decided that I had to be proven wrong. But I still find myself riding the fence, and we've talked about it before. It really just comes down to location and how hard travel can be as a full-time member in a new conference, especially one that's, you would put you on the furthest geographic island in that conference. So I think that's still tough, but at the same time, I've definitely been impressed by them. I think without a doubt, they are ready for the jump up to FBS. I can't wait to see what they do for the rest of the season. I still want to see them in Conference USA just because I think that marriage between Sam Houston and Tarleton State would be just a great natural rivalry there, and really taking advantage and honestly a good lifeline for Conference USA, which who knows could be getting robbed here in the next couple of years of members depending on how this realignment slide continues to go.
Yeah, I mean, Conference USA is in a really bad spot. They lost Louisiana Tech, they lost UTEP, and while UTEP specifically hasn't been the success that I think you would hope that they would have been in Conference USA, that's still a pretty big size city. El Paso is not a small place, and it's still a population center with a nice stadium. I love the Sun Bowl. I think it's one of the best venues in college sports. So, and then Louisiana Tech, obviously, that's the school that left Conference USA, correct? I'm not
Yeah, they left,
right?
they left for the Sun Belt. That was really more of a geographic pickup, I think, than anything else. Just the Sun Belt looking for a new Western member to fill out, because I think they're the only conference that still does East and West divisions. So looking for a team to fill out that Western Conference, and they're really going all in on Louisiana, it looks like, and trying to throw a lifeline to La Monroe. Really hoping that they don't kick the bucket anytime soon. They've had their struggles for sure.
Totally, yeah. And I think Tarleton to Conference USA, you're absolutely right that it totally makes sense for them to go to Conference USA. It would be I think they could actually win Conference USA. Like, I think that they could compete with Liberty. I think that they could compete with Western Kentucky. My problem, my problems with Tarleton State, I agree with, like, geographically, it doesn't make a ton of sense. It's not like they're right outside a geographic, like a metro area. They're like 2 hours south of Dallas. And for football, that's not a problem. It's all good. They can join football. They can charter out. They're a part of the A&M education system. It's a big university. They have money behind them. But for the stick and ball sports, the Olympic sports, there's some issues with that for being full members of a conference like the Mountain West. Now, there are some issues with with Conference USA too. I think Conference USA is kind of just, I mean, it's basically just an FCS kind of conference now. I mean, like, it's not. There's some good programs in it, but the lower levels of it are really rough, and the media payout distribution that you get from that conference, yes, like it makes life very difficult to have to travel to Hawaii to play if you join the new Mountain West. I actually agree with you. I think that Tarleton is a few years out. I think if they could join Conference USA, they should. But if the Mountain West added Tarleton tomorrow, I'd actually be really happy about it. I think it would be great. But I like you, used to be a bit more anti-Tarleton. I'm a little more pro-Tarleton. But I feel like the Mountain West, especially with these lawsuits still pending, and we were hoping that we would have, before we recorded again, we were hoping we would have some resolution to that motion to dismiss. Not that I would expect that to decide the case or anything, but just something new. I think Tarleton's a couple of years away, as are basically all the FCS schools that we're going to talk about, in my opinion, at least. So I agree with you. I think that there's geographical, but they have the money and they have the competition. And those two things are like the most important things. So there are some big obstacles still, but the fact that they're that far along already, I think is really encouraging for their future.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't want to keep harping on them too much because we have plenty more to get to. But
Yeah.
I think, I could see it kind of like an NIU ad, get yourself in the central time zone a little bit more, continue to juice that Texas recruiting zone. It's definitely a selling point. I think for football only, they could do it. But that's really the only way that I see it for the Mountain West. And again, that's no knock on Tarleton. Genuinely, my concerns are really born out of my concern for their well-being at the FBS level. Like, it's a big jump to bring everything. It's a big jump to bring everything. And with that kind of baggage, like you said, with the stick and ball sports, with those Olympic sports, I'd love to see them go to Conference USA, dominate, and really build themselves up as a national brand, get themselves on national television, and then go move to the Mountain West, like at 2029 even. You never know, just a quick 2-year jump. I think that could totally happen. But like you said, it is a big jump, and I'd say they're a few years out from being able to support everything going to the Mountain West. It just seems a bridge just a little bit too far for me.
Totally agree. The only way that it would happen is if one of their big, because they actually do have big money donors, believe it or not, and they have fans too, which is really awesome for a program like that. Like you said to me yesterday, they had fans at that Army game in
Saw
upstate
them
New
on
York.
television. They've
That's
handled
crazy.
it multiple times.
Yeah,
I saw
that's crazy.
cowboy hats in upstate New York. Who would have thought?
Yeah. So our next school we wanted to talk about, and I'm going to skip one because I want to talk about Sac State first. I am team anti-Stack State. Sac State. I think they're kind of a house of cards. I think that they don't have, the school's big, but I don't like the campus. I don't believe that they're actually going to build that stadium. And I guess I'm just the big doubt. I don't believe in them, and I think they're kind of full of crap. So I want you to talk to me, try and talk me off the Sac State ledge here, because I don't believe in them.
I think what you have to look at here is stuff that isn't totally obvious. Yes, there's a ton of smoke, and you got to think: is there mirrors behind that smoke? Is this a light show? And part of it is that, right? Like they led a very public, very vocal, and in some ways controversial. A lot of people didn't like what they were saying. I think Dr. Luke Wood, he referenced FCS football being JV. That rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, especially some of their peers. in the Big Sky. I think that would probably part of the impetus of them deciding to leave and go to the Big West, bring their Olympic sports to the Big West, and then go independent for the rest of their sports. Or sorry, go to independent for football rather. What you don't see is how much they're actually spending. They talked a lot about these NIL commitments and donations and money, and you really don't. It's hard to see that in action, but you can take a couple of things. One, I have some inside information. I know they're spending, and they're spending on more than just football, and that to me is an indicator. No football school spends more money on other sports if they don't have money they're already spending on football. So that's the first thing for me is I know for a fact that they are investing in other sports, namely basketball. And then the second thing I would say is another indicator is big money hires. Like you wouldn't be able to, even though one of Shaq's kids is now on the team. You wouldn't have Shaq at Sac State, like the money he'd probably demand, as their basketball GM. Mike Bibby, even though he's not a proven coach at all, we have talked about this. I think you still have to pay that man a lot of money. And as Brennan Marion, their head coach, you have to pay him a lot of money to leave UNLV the way that he did. Those aren't nothing. And the third indicator for me is their performance in recruiting. So first off, their initial, just kind of the first thing to get off the table, they were knocked it out of the park in the transfer portal. Like they were going, beating out a ton of FBS teams in the transfer portal, I guess promising these kids that they'd win a national championship at the FCS level and then build something. And somehow they were able to sell that. I'm sure they had money they were shelling out because you can't get that many recruits coming through the portal just with nothing. I don't remember what their final portal ranking was, but another key indicator of success is their 2026 recruiting rankings, because recruiting rankings still do matter. I think they had the highest recruiting ranking of any FCS school by a long shot by 24/7 Sports. It was 192.22. The next closest FCS school at this time for 2026 is Idaho with 142.21. If you're wondering kind of a barometer of where a 192 recruiting ranking puts them, USF is the top group of 5 school at the moment for recruiting for next year, and they have a 197.36. Memphis is a 176.94. Boise 193.64. Wazoo is at 175.17. So they're in the right company, and they are recruiting heavy, and they are portaling heavy. The money's being spent. You can't get that without money. So I guess that's my full Sac State pitch. I think that they'd be a great addition to the Mountain West as a football only member while they fixed up their facilities on the other side of things with the Olympic sports, and they can complement UC Davis in that media market until you can combine Olympic sports and football for both teams when the facilities and the level of play are ready.
Yeah, I just, I like a couple of the other, I guess there are definite positives. And in my video that I did on them, I found some positives too. My biggest things are I just like other candidates more. I like Sac State, and I guess my biggest obstacle, and we'll get into our last kind of FCS school to all these FCS schools, is how are you going to get FBS? How are you going to get FBS status? Because the FBS seems like it's closing its ranks right now. They're really hesitant to add new teams. And I guess that's kind of my first hurdle, even before the next school, which I think everybody can agree would do really well in the Mountain West, that we'll talk about. My biggest problem with all these schools is, how are you going to get to FBS? And I want to know the legal processes of that. And I feel like everybody's in a holding. I feel like they're going to try and keep schools from coming to see the FBS level up until 2030. I feel like everybody's trying to take a pause here and figure out what football is going to be. And so for all of these FCS schools, and let's talk about the next one, because I think this school specifically is one of, and when I heard the news that this school was being added to the Mountain West, I was pretty upset. I thought, what the heck are we doing? UC Davis? But UC Davis actually, in my eyes, is a real asset to the Mountain West now, because it's a natural fit. It's in a decent market. I mean, it's, Northern California. There's a lot of competition for that market, but it's a real school with really good academics, with a like $1 billion endowment, with real money behind it, and that does have a good FCS football program, and is already a natural partner joining the Mountain West, and actually has a contractual obligation to be the first FCS school that the Mountain West adds. So Sac State, NDSU, all these schools we're talking about, none of them can be added before UC Davis. And so I think UC Davis is awesome. I think Sac State has potential, but I'd love to transition to UC Davis. What do you think about them? Are you as high on them as an addition? I just think, and I'm not even saying that I think they're going to come in and dominate the Mountain West in football. I just like that the Mountain West had this plan kind of on the back burner, and I think it's money-wise makes a lot of sense. What are your feelings on UC Davis?
Yeah, I am high on UC Davis. Talk about a great school with a great, tons of money, boatloads of money. Their endowment is one of the highest public school endowments in the country. I gotta imagine, up there in pretty good company. And it's not like they're not performing in football too. They've been super competitive over the last few years. Right now, going back to recruiting rankings, they're at a 124.05, which puts them in the same company as Hawaii's got a 132. New Mexico's at a 117. So again, they're recruiting at the right level. I think another thing we talked about yesterday, the plans actually are already printed for their football stadium to be enlarged from 110,000 seats to, I think it can go up to 30. It doesn't need to, but the stadium was built and designed with expansion in mind. They knew they were going to elevate at some point. Those Olympic sports are no joke. So that's a great addition. Though I hate what it did to the Big West. That conference is kind of in disarray right now, but the power imbalance between the UC and the CSU schools is definitely really interesting. I think Deluxe did a really good video on that, but I won't talk about it too much. I think UC Davis is a great ad. I'd love to see them in tandem with Sac State. That's a great rivalry. It's organic. It's already there, and they love it. So I didn't know that it was contractual that they have to be the first school. I hadn't read their contract, but that's really
Nevada Sportsnet reported that. So I'm kind of, I don't want to throw the responsibility onto that website. That's the website that covers Reno sports. And so, but yeah, they're the first school that the Mountain West will add to the FBS ranks. And I think that's a good idea. I mean, like, there's money there. Like, that's the reason why you look at a lot of these schools. Sac State, yes, like, I know they have the pledges and all that stuff, but like an endowment, for a school, and not that all of that goes to football. I'm not saying that, UC Davis is going to spend $200 or $300 million a year on their football program, but when the money's there, when it's already accounted for, which it is in the case of UC Davis, I think that's just a real asset. And UC Davis is clearly positioning itself to join the Mountain West. And I think Gloria Navarez is, say what you want about her, I do think that she thinks ahead as well as she can with what she has. And of all the schools outside of the next one that we're going to talk about, which is North Dakota State, I think that UC Davis really was a really forward thinking that you'd think, with UC Davis, the Mountain West, what the heck are we doing? And then you really sit down and think about it, and it makes a ton of sense. And so, yeah, we kind of see eye to eye on that one. The next one, and you had some insights on this school in North Dakota State that I didn't. You think that there's a serious appetite for the Mountain West to add North Dakota State, at least from North Dakota State fans, and I think there is from the Mountain West too, to be honest with you. I just think so much is in flux right now. Tell me about, your thoughts on North Dakota State. Why do they have that appetite to join the Mountain West?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think honestly, I guess backing up just for a second, you mentioned what does the process look like to go up to FBS? There's a committee that you have to go through from college football, and then there's another committee from the NCAA that has to assess your readiness. And I think if they went before that committee and did what Sac State did, and they said, oh, we're going to join as an independent in the FBS ranks, we're going to do it tomorrow, I think they'd be like, okay, like, genuinely. I think it's 11 national championships in the last 13 years, something absurd like that. I mentioned the numbers in my last video. They are, I don't think there's been a better better form of the word domination. Like, it's literally just the embodiment of the definition of domination. They have had their way with the FCS for well over 2 decades, and from interactions that I've had with fans online, I am fairly active on Twitter in certain spaces, especially Western football, and man, some of the things that NDSU has certain fan pages set up just for NDSU to FBS, which I think is awesome for them. But looking at this more from a practical standpoint, they're in a really similar position as NIU is, where they have a national brand in football, a very prominent national brand. They're recruiting the right way. They're at the right level. They're investing the right way. They have the amount of money behind them that they need. They actually pull from the Minneapolis DMA. Most of their alumni live there, and it's a great actually recruiting bed for them. They definitely are dominant in recruiting in those upper Midwest states, kind of west of Minnesota. So they're actually, I think it's a 9-hour drive from NIU, so it is technically drivable. I'm sure they'd fly if their football team was doing it. I think they'd be a football only, but they're in the right location to be. I think they can continue being in the Olympic sports in the Horizon League or the Missouri Valley Conference, non-football Missouri Valley Conference, because those are actually two different things. And I really genuinely, it would be not hard for them to do it. Their stadium wouldn't even be the smallest in the Mountain West, even though it's domed and in Fargo, North Dakota. It seats like well over, I think it's over 17,000. It's bigger than San Diego State Stadium, and it's bigger
San
than
Jose State.
That's what I meant. Sorry. San Jose State, after the renovation, the downsizing, and then the current TF Ching Athletic Center, the athletic field that Hawaii is currently using to play football. But Aloha Stadium in 2029 looks dope. Anyways,
yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm happy for them. I wish it was sooner, to be honest with you, but
they've been trying to find the money for years. This is a big step for them, period. So yeah, no, I think NDSU is a no-brainer. I think if they decided tomorrow that they wanted to go, Mountain West would say yes. I have no doubts about that. I think part of I heard someone say that they had information that from an administrator that essentially they wanted a full share if they were going to come to the Mountain West for football only, which is that's a tough sell. So who knows? Everyone says things before negotiation, and I'm sure they could make it happen if they wanted to make it happen. I hope they do. And I think, again, UC Davis, if it is true what Nevada Sportsnet is talking about, if it's true that they have to be the first, I'm sure like UC Davis would probably waive that for the good of the conference.
Yeah, I agree. I think if NDSU, but I also, I really do believe that with all this uncertainty, the Mountain West being at 9 members, that's too few. I mean, that we should be at 10 or 11 members, to be honest with you, to be a really healthy conference. But 9 is enough to have 8 conference games and to maintain kind of what the schools are doing right now. And so, with all these schools, and we got one last big one to talk about, I totally agree with you on North Dakota State. You opened my eyes a little bit on that one. Wish the Mountain West would add them. They would make North Dakota State would be a good G5 football program, like right now. Like they're already there. Like they would be a good G5 program at this exact moment.
No doubt.
And so, say what you want about it. Could they be like a dominant G5 football program? I think the appetite's there too. Their stadium's 19,000. They can get 19,000 people in there, and they sell it, man. I mean, say what you want about it. You sell what you have, and they sell it. So you've really kind of, I feel like my discussions with you have really made me more open to that. The last school I wanted to talk about is one that I have been so negative on, and I actually generally throw it out as a joke at the Pac-12 because of the, which we'll get to in a second, the roadblocks in expansion for the Pac-12. But it's New Mexico State. And I think that you have a really good angle on this. So why me? I'm skeptical. Let's Run podcast with Jason Kelly. I'm very skeptical. I want you to be the attorney for New Mexico State. Give it to me, because I think you have a good argument here.
Yeah. I mean, at first glance, it's a tough look, right? Because their football team has struggled. Though, again, Diego Pavia, organic product of New Mexico State, brought them to 2 winning seasons and a bowl game and 10 wins, which is unheard of for them in the past 20 years. But I think the big thing there is they're the only FBS team left in the Mountain or Pacific time zone that isn't, at least in the G5 ranks, that isn't in the Mountain West or the Pac-12. And with, like you said, with the ranks being so thin, really the 9 football members is actually 8 full-time members that are playing football. Because and I use football only. Now that could change if you elevate UC Davis, but given the NCAA's eligibility rules and all of that, it's not a comfortable place to be. And as a PAC fan, I'm there. It's eight full football playing members. It's a tough place to be. It's not comfortable. We're playing 7 conference games next year, and you can see what kind of like articles are being written about it. How is the PAC going to have 5 out of conference games? It's expensive and it's difficult to do. And so where the Mountain West is, you want to be in a healthier spot. Geographically, it makes sense, right? It's right in that footprint. It's a perfect travel partner for UTEP. It's really not that far from Albuquerque. And one of the things that we talked about yesterday was a piece of news that came out. New Mexico sold out its student section for the first time in 16 years for this weekend when they host New Mexico State in football. Even though New Mexico is not very good, New Mexico State is not very good this year. Like the amount of buzz that these games draw, and you've seen it in basketball year over year, you've seen it in baseball year over year. People get off their butts and like go to these games in New Mexico. Like it's a big, big deal. They make a huge deal out of this rivalry. I'm pretty sure blood has been shed over this rivalry. There is some bad blood there, but bad blood makes headlines and that sells. It's money. You get attention. These are headlines. You want these teams having organic rivalries with each other in the same conference. It's a big sell. It's not always about overlapping media markets, which has been the big argument against them because they're in the Las Cruces, which is about 30 minutes from El Paso. It's basically been looped in as the same media market, and UTEP was the better grab of the two, so they took UTEP, and UTEP, even though it's in Texas, is still in the Mountain Time Zone. Again, the big thing there is that overlapping time zone that's been the barrier, and also their football has been kind of weak, but they have numerous conference championships in basketball, numerous conference championships in baseball in the last 20 years. Actually, they have more tournament appearances than St. Mary's in the last 2 decades. It's like, yeah, people will say it's because they were in a weak conference, but their basketball games are selling out. People want to see this product. I'd love to see those 2 rivalries in the Mountain West because they sell. They'll put that on national television. They will. I truly believe that, and I'll scream it from the rooftops because right now, you talk about the Pac-12 getting screwed because they're left on an island and they don't have anywhere to go. That's kind of New Mexico State right now. Yes, they're in a conference. They're getting a media payout from the Conference USA. That's great. They're full members, but their closest member is like, I think it's like hundreds, almost 1,000 miles away in East Texas with Sam Houston State. Like that's not optimal, obviously, but like they're really having to overspend, and that's really been hindering them because they're overspending on travel because now they have conference play in Delaware. That's a massive road trip for someone in South New Mexico. So I really think that this could be like, I think the NIU commissioner and AD and Commissioner Navarez, who's done a great job with realignment, I agree with you, have talked about is the halo effect. Basically, the rising tide is raising all boats. I really hope that they're able to land this. Even a half share would be a pretty significant pay raise for them. I think they're at 500 to 800 grand right now, and they would go up to 1.75, 2 billion with what the current projections are. Like, I really genuinely think that's a bargain at any price for this kind of team, this kind of school, and the kind of rivalries that you could monetize.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. I like rivalries. Say what you want about Reno football. UNLV's rivalry with Reno is important to me. The battle for the free. We have, I think, in my opinion, easily the best trophy in all of college football. And there's real bad blood between Reno and Vegas. You better believe it. And I think that New Mexico and New Mexico State absolutely hate each other. And so I think you're right there. And I think this kind of illustrates just that the Mountain West has options. Like there's real schools out there. I think they're going to be in a holding pattern. I really think it's going to be at least 2028 before we see the Mountain West go above 9 members in terms of football playing members. But transitioning to the Pac-12, and we wanted to, man, we just love to talk, don't we? Transitioning to the Pac-12, I want to talk about St. Mary's first because, do you think that St. Mary's, this is a question for you, transitioning over to Pac-12 expansion, do you think St. Mary's is trying to leverage 3 different conferences for their current membership? The WCC, where they're the kings of the castle, the Mountain West, which could use some more basketball strength, and the Pac-12. What do you think their thinking is right now?
I think that's a perfect illustration of what they're trying to do, because they're trying to squeeze out the best possible sweetheart deal that they can from the WCC, similar to what Gonzaga did a couple of years ago when they threatened to leave for the Big 12, or what, maybe it was the Big East. It was one of the two, but again, they're really trying to squeeze whatever value they can out of their brand right now while everyone's shopping around. They want to be in the Pac-12. I think it's very obvious they want to be on the Pac-12. They've been vocal about that. They want to continue their rivalry. I personally think that's because that's where they derive most of their value from, is that they rose to the top and they just happened to be the second best team in the WCC, and it made for great television when they played Gonzaga. And so I think that part of them is a little insecure about losing some of their value without Gonzaga. Playing in a conference without Gonzaga is definitely something. It's not going to draw as many eyes. I think definitely that's a fear. I think they could be a great addition to the Mountain West, who has really a very diverse field of teams. And at the top, certainly great basketball programs with UNLV. Reno has some great basketball history. New Mexico lights out. I think they're a 2-bid league solidly every year. I think with St. Mary's, you make them that's probably a teetering on a 3-bid league for the tournament, and I think that is definitely realistic. And so it depends on how much the Mountain West is able to offer them. Are they going to demand the same deal from the Mountain West that Gonzaga demanded from the PAC, which is a full membership, with voting rights, the whole shebang? Are they going to, and then going to the PAC? They want to be in the PAC, but the PAC really just wants to lowball them. They want them for cheap. And I'm kind of in the same boat. Their facilities aren't quite there. I think they've had some dubious academic problems with kind of some of their accreditations might be at risk, is what I heard. They're a small school. The PAC prides itself on being a group of like-minded schools, really the most odd one out. And the smallest one is Gonzaga. I think they're like 8,000 undergrad, but my Northeast tiny D3 school that I went to was like 2,000. That's about the size that St. Mary's is, and they're in a good market in San Francisco. But again, that stadium, the being at 3,500 seats is holding them back. There are bigger high school gyms, right? So it's certainly something that's a problem. They've talked about expanding it. And I wonder if it's maybe a chicken or an egg thing, because it seems to be really holding up a lot of voting members in the PAC on whether or not they're a worthwhile ad. Maybe, who knows? Maybe if they agree to play some of these bigger games, their Pac-12 games at old Oracle Arena. I think it's called Oakland Arena, where the Golden Warriors used to play. Maybe which is 30 minutes away. Maybe that's something that they can do. But it's a big ask. Like, you're asking them to now invest a ton of money on infrastructure before they even get to the conference, and that's tough. So I don't know. I think they want to be in the PAC, but I think that actually if they do it right, which it seems like they are, they can get a lot of value out of their brand in another conference.
Yeah, I'm good on St. Mary's. I from what I understand, I do not believe that Grand Canyon got a full football share from the Mountain West. I know that they're getting more than they've gotten previously, and they're a big football school, and they have a lot of money behind Grand Canyon anyway. But I think that your conference can do something like that for one school. And not that St. Mary's was on the option, like was like in discussions with the Mountain West. And if they've had discussions, I think they've been very preliminary. I don't think they've actually, gone down, sat down with Gloria and with the spreadsheet and tried to figure it out. But I'm good on St. Mary's. They got a great coach. And I don't know that they have the investment to back up, their program past a coach. I think Gonzaga does, although there's a little bit of worry. You kind of wonder what happens when Mark Few retires, but I think Gonzaga has enough institutional support and enough money behind it. I mean, they spend as much on basketball as some schools spend on football, maybe more. And so I think that each conference can only afford to do that for one school. And I'm glad that if the Mountain West, I'm not saying they did choose, but I'm glad if the Mountain West chose, I would rather have Grand Canyon 10 times out of 10 than St. Mary's. Their gym's too small. They're too reliant on a coach. They don't invest. I don't like, the academic, like you said, there's some red flags there, which I wasn't aware of. I'm good on St. Mary's. I don't have fun in the WCC. Don't think we need to add St. Mary's, even though they would help UNLV and, the Mountain West, the new Mountain West. I just think the money's not quite there. I don't think they bring enough. And their value, like you said, is tied to Gonzaga. It's the fact that they're a rival. We just talked about this with New Mexico State and New Mexico. And that's just not quite enough for me. So I'm good. I think the PAC adding them would be a mistake. I think the Mountain West adding them would be a mistake unless you could get them for a quarter of the media deal, which they're not going to take from the Mountain West because the WCC will do everything they can to keep them. So I'm good on St. Mary's. I don't think they're an option. And I think if the PAC adds them or the Mountain West adds them, it's a mistake. That's kind of my view on it. I don't know if you have any comments on that before we kind of get to our last grand finale topic here.
No, I'm with you on that. I think we're one of the same there. Again, I don't know that they survive past their current coach. I forget his name, but he's done a great
Randy
job.
Bennett.
Yeah, Randy Bennett, and all of their, I think it's been 16 tournament appearances over the last 3 decades have come under his tutelage. So
yep.
It really begs the question: is it just one coach? And they found some payment for him, and they obviously he's comfortable in his house in the Bay Area, or is it actually success and it'll continue afterwards? And I think another element of this is I don't always love these kind of super conference like mindsets. Like, I don't know that we need to rob a non-football conference of one of their most valuable members. Like, I like the NCAA tournament for the fact that it takes champions from all over the NCAA. Right? Every single NCAA conference that's an eligible basketball conference is able to send their champion automatically to the tournament. I love that. It's part of the magic of March Madness. And like, if you rob the WCC of St. Mary's, you kind of rob them of stability. And they're actually, I've seen some articles, a lot of administrators in that league are really worried about it. And so that's why they brought in UC San Diego, which is their first public school in that conference, public non-religious institution in that conference in, I think it's almost 2 decades. Like, this is definitely a historic one for them. So, and then same thing, Big West just added Cal Baptist. That's their first private institution on a similar time frame. So again, I think it's, I think St. Mary's as the king of the WCC is a great fit. They spend, other teams are going to be able to spend the way that they spend, and they'll have a great rivalry with Santa Clara, who's also in their footprint. I think that they can do that. And just because they're not in a conference with Gonzaga doesn't mean that they can't play them every year. Right.
So. Yeah, well, I guess we'll see. We'll see if Gonzaga wants to schedule them. I mean, maybe they'll want to keep the rivalry up, because that's a legit rivalry. That's an awesome rivalry, and it sucks to lose that. So kind of last topic here. I'm gonna say a few things. You may not like a few of the things that I'm gonna say, and then I'm gonna let you kind of plead your case because I'm kind of very convinced of this opinion. I do not think that the Pac-12 has actual expansion targets. I think that the AAC, now we're switching to football. Out of the basketball realm, we're talking about expansion. We talked about how the Mountain West does have options. The Pac-12. I don't believe they have actual expansion targets. I think they're going to be an 8-membered league until 2030. And I am very, 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 very convinced of this. My main reasonings being because I think the AAC has a good argument. They certainly are this year, better than whatever's going on out west in the G5. You look at Navy, North Texas, Tulane, Memphis. There's some good programs in the AAC. They have financial stability, a deal with ESPN locked up. You have schools that have won, group New Year's Six games more recently than any school out west in Tulane. And I just think that before 2030, that 2031 thing, I do not see them leaving a stable situation, paying $15 to $25 million in exit fees to join a conference that's leadership oversaw the death of one of the great college football collections of schools. I don't see them trusting them, and they have publicly reaffirmed their commitment to the American time and time again. And I don't think the schools will want to split up their sports either. You look around college sports, how many schools play different sports between their football and their basketball? It's Navy, it's Army. I don't really count independents in that. Like I don't really count Notre Dame and UConn in that because they're independent. They're not different conferences. And so I don't see a path. I think that there's a negative chance that any American school ever joins. I think if the Pac-12 wanted to expand, it would have to be a Sun Belt or a Conference USA type team, maybe a Liberty football only. That seems like that could happen. But prove me wrong. Convince me, because you have some facts, you have some numbers, and I know we disagree about this. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think we could have a whole podcast on how much we disagree on. But at the same time, I love that we're able to engage in productive discourse about this. I don't think that I'm going to be able to get through to you necessarily, but I might be able to get you thinking. And I think one of the things that you said to me yesterday was something along the lines of why would they leave for an inferior football conference? And to that, I say I disagree. I think that the Mountain West is struggling to keep up with the American contenders this year, but that's because there's no Pac-12. And they're not yet, right? And so I think you look at what the conference will be and what the conference can be. I personally think that next year it will be without a doubt the best football conference. I think there is some doubt, and that's the biter right now, right? And one of the things we talked about, not wanting super conferences, not wanting nationwide super conferences, which is why I push back on Liberty, and even I push back on UConn, even though I'm from Connecticut and appreciate them as an institution. If you put the schools that I think mainly the schools that I'd like to see in the Pac-12 are Memphis, Tulane football only, and UTSA all sports. The main reason for that is I'd love to have them in basketball as well, but it's too far. In the reason I say that is on a 30-seat charter plane, which is what most basketball teams used to travel, it doesn't have the range to do it in one go. It's almost I think it's an 1,800-mile trip to at least half of the schools in the Pac-12. So you can't have them in basketball and the Olympic sports, because the Olympic sport, while basketball might have the money to do it, the Olympic sports don't. And that's a lot of wear and tear on your athletes. Football could totally do it. They could do it tomorrow. And it would be, I think if you add Memphis and Tulane, you throw in UTSA, who can be in the conference for all of their sports. I think should be, because they have great baseball and their women's basketball program is actually super strong. You have the makings of a super conference in the I guess a G5 super conference, which elevates what was a power conference back up to power status in my mind. The next 5 years are a tryout for whatever the heck is chaos is going to reign in 2031 when the media deals all come to an end. I think you put yourself in the best position to elevate and try out for the leagues above if you're in the PAC in football, because that's really what is going to matter. I think I don't want a team like USF. It's too far, and honestly, I think USF is the first school that's going to get picked for the when the if a team decides to leave the ACC, which they're doing great right now. I think that USF's the first one to go. But really, I think you're going to see it in doubt. You're going to see a lot of propaganda thrown back and forth. The propaganda against the PAC is, oh my gosh, look at the records this year and blah, blah, blah. I really don't care what's going on. Obviously I care because I'm a fan, But like, I don't I don't see the records of Oregon State and Washington State this year and last year as reflections of their, or as indicative of their future success, because it's, they're two teams without a conference, barnstorming an independent schedule, and they both just lost coaches. Like, any team that just lost a coach is going to be thrown into turmoil. Look at UCLA. Look at Oklahoma State. Right? It's not a, this isn't a singular issue. I think this is a very, this is a common one, and it's not like they're not going to rise back to where they were, which is competing at a power conference level. They're going to have a little bit less money, but I think they're still fully capable of doing that, and they're intent on doing so. I think you want to be in a conference with teams that are all consistently punching way high in recruiting, in national attention. Do you want to be playing on ESPN Plus for the duration of your tryout, which is basically that's their deal, is they play on ESPN Plus, and ESPN can choose to elevate one of their games if they want to a nationally televised platform like ESPN2 or ABC. The PAC looks like it's going to get all of their games on national television, or a massive, a large majority of them. I would say that the argument for the PAC against the AAC is, again, bringing it back to recruiting rankings. The average recruiting ranking out of the PAC is, of the members that are going to be in it next year, is 165.33. The AAC mean is 126.01. And just to kind of put it in perspective, the median is 120 in the AAC, and it's 177 in the PAC. So you have teams that are just like, I think the Utah State is the only one that's below even 140 in the Pac-12, and they're at like 99. The rest of them are well up in the recruiting rankings for next year. They're stable. They're garnering the attention that they need to. Right now, you have 5 schools that are propping up the average for the American. That's USF, Tulane, Temple, Memphis, and Tulsa, and that's the only one above. Like, do you want to be in and Tulsa's not, like, barely, I think they're 136, but it's like, do you want to be in a conference that's being drugged down by UAB and Charlotte and like Rice, or do you want to be in a conference where you're competing against the best of the best in the G5? And I think it will really come to a head if at the end of this season, somehow Boise or UNLV is chosen over the American champion, because say the ones at the top beat each other up, and maybe they're 2 loss when they win the championship, and UNLV or Boise is, I think for UNLV it'd have to be undefeated. For Boise it could be 1 loss. But like, really, that's if that happens, I think essentially I saw Memphis folks talking about it, like in the offseason, calling their conference a Chicken Joe conference because they were crapping on their the Soar the Eagle, the new mascot. I think that's harsh, but like there's clearly been an appetite for wanting to move. They were willing to shell out $250 million. I know that wasn't technically real money, but it was, or cash money. It was promises, but again, they want to leave. And so I think that you might see it come to a head. There might be a piece that moves that'll dictate this in a different direction. And for me, I think that's really where I stand is I think it's definitely possible. And I think it's a lot more possible than they want you to believe. That same message that came from the American members that were there was that poaching attempt, and they said they're reaffirming their commitment. It's the same message that came from UW and Oregon right before they left the Pac-12 and plunged it into chaos. So that's enough of my ranting. Obviously very animated. But I genuinely do feel passionate about it. And I think, again, I think there's a lot more of a chance than you're giving it right now.
Yeah, I think there's a better chance that the Pac-12 goes bankrupt and the Mountain West and Pac-12 join together as one conference than any American school joins the new Pac-12. because think of the financial, the American isn't going to let those schools leave. They're not going to be like we'll settle on the exit fees. We're going to leave the Mountain West, join the new Pac-12. We're going to settle down the exit fees. It's not like the American's going to be happy about that. They're going to be like, SMU paid $25 million. That'll be $25 million, please. That's the precedent that you set and you demanded. That's what they're going to do. And these schools before 2030 in a conference that right now is proving that, and in the past, who has more G5, and New Year's Six appearances over the last 10 years? The schools currently in the American all put together, or the schools in the new Mountain West, or in the new Pac-12 all put together? It's the schools in the American. Both Tulane and Memphis have made, the college football playoff in the last 5 years. Not the college, sorry. The 12 team, I should say. The 12 team, whatever, in the last 5 years. And I just think they want to be in the conference that's going to give them the best chance to make the college football playoff. And I don't think that's spending millions upon millions of dollars and joining a group of like-minded schools that seem to want to spend more on lawyers than student athletes. Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that Boise State and Utah State, Colorado, I love the fact that these schools were so like-minded that they wanted to invest into UNLV by paying us rather than paying their student athletes. I think it's just such a foolish decision that these schools in the Pac-12 made. And now we're too far gone, obviously. Oh, dude, in the recent days, the recent months, I've really come to be angry at the Mountain West schools for kowtowing to the group of losers that oversaw the death of a 100-year conference. But that's how I feel about it now, and I didn't feel about it a year ago. But seeing the American schools and seeing how barren it is out west for G5 college football, it is so idiotic. I mean, every conference has schools that struggle at the bottom of it. The Big Ten has schools that struggle at the bottom of it, or the SEC has schools that struggle at the bottom, and the whole dead weight. It's such an elitist mindset from the departing. And I don't blame this on Utah State on Oregon State or Washington State. They were trying to protect their assets, but boy, oh boy, do I feel passionate about that. I think it's the dumbest decision that these schools made in the Mountain West, kowtowing to Teresa Gould. The back of the envelope calculations that were being made on the Pac-12 media deal. I know that George Kliavkov's gone, but that group is still there. And I know it's really important that the Pac-12 currently has people still being paid by this conference that oversaw the death of the old Pac-12. But it's going to be tough. I disagree. And if I'm wrong, man, you feel free to, name the price. If an American school joins before the year 2030 in any form or fashion, you name the price. Anybody can name the price. I'll do whatever you want. Anything.
I won't give you the PAC chat ultimatum. He's still got to do that, by the way. That's
yeah, he does, doesn't he? He's got to
anyone who knows what we're talking about. If you don't know what we're talking about, Twitter's a nasty place.
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up good points, by the way. I'm not. You're not saying nothing there. I just think
to the
post 2030. Sorry, I'll just say this one more point. Post 2030, I think that you have a point. Post 2030, but once we know what's going to happen with the Power League and the Super League, I think the world's your oyster. The world's your oyster. I really do, because then we'll know what's going to happen. The schools will have basically, if any more G5 schools are going to be called up, that's when that'll have been done. They're not going to waste their money on litigation and exit fees. They're going to know where they can spend it to try and get to a power. So post 2030, I think that you got a point. And I think that you bring up good points even now. I'm not trying to say you're bringing up good points. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful, because you are bringing up actual data. So I don't know, any closing thoughts you wanted to have kind of as we end this one out.
Well, I mean, honestly, to the Mountain West credit, they're actually recruiting at a better rate than the American right now. They have a 128.09, the future members of the Mountain West, by the way. This isn't the current Mountain West. And their median is 132.22, being brought down most by Wyoming and UTEP. So, but everyone else is actually recruiting at a pretty good clip. So genuinely, I think people don't fully appreciate, and I guess this is my last gasp. They don't appreciate how brutal the kind of the suck of some of these bottom tier teams in the American can truly be. And that's why there's been so much frustrations, because it used to be and I mean, up until this year, basically all it takes is one stumble in the American, one bad game, and you're playing Navy's triple option and you're screwed. Right. And or really, I think, again, I think you could see it come to a head. I think the decisions have to happen before the new year, in my opinion, if there's going to be any expansion in 2027 from the American. And the playoff committee and the bowl selections come out early December. I think you could totally see something happen there. If the American team misses out, maybe Mr. FedEx goes up to Ed Scott, taps him on the shoulder, and says, "Hey, I think it's time." Kind of, which you know what? I props to them for defending their conference and all that, but I genuinely think they'd be in a better spot in the Pac-12, and I think that there are ways to do it, like their Olympic sports from Memphis and Tulane to the A10 even. Maybe it's not the Big East, maybe it's the A10. I think that's still a 2-bid league. It's a competitive basketball conference that would shell them out each, $5 million a year, and top that on top of an $8 million partial share. It's 80% of 10 million. It's like in the Pac-12, like that, you're making more money than even your boosted salary right now with the payouts and all that from the American. So I don't know. I think there's ways that it can be done. But honestly, I think I've sometimes I think too much about it. I want to live in the here and now because this is still an amazing football season, and I'm really enjoying watching all of it. And especially like I watch from I'm on the Mountain Time Zone. I watch from 10 a.m. or even before that. I watch game day, and then I watched the 10 a.m. kickoff, which is the noon kickoff, and then I watch the 9 p.m., 10 p.m. kickoff in Hawaii. I watch all the way through because just I love this sport and I love what it's about. And so I know we talked for double the amount of time.
I know we were going to do, we went into this conversation. We're going to do half an hour. We're going to keep it under half an hour.
It happens every time. Every time.
Yeah. I would just say to kind of close out, I think if the American schools could, and the American as like a conference, if they could drop off their bottom schools, keep their leadership, kick Teresa Gould to the curb, I think you might find some of the problems. A lot of the times we love to talk about this in terms of the schools, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's actually the conference leadership. I think a lot of the problem with the Mountain West and the Pac-12 was that the Pac-12 still had its conference leadership, as a corporate entity separate from the schools, and the Mountain West, and there was a fight between those two entities just as much as there was a fight between the schools. So, I mean, it sucks for everybody. I think it's unoptimal. Yeah. I don't know a great solution. I think the Mountain West is going to be really cautious and wait to expand. And I think that the Pac-12, I think we're going to be in a holding period here for at least a few years. And come up with a bet for me, man. I'm telling you, anything you want, any American school. It can be, Tulsa joining the Pac-12 football only. If there's an American school joining, I'll do anything you want. So
I think that I'll have to get thinking. I think the last thing I'll say is, it might even be more likely, and I think I joked about this one time, is if you're a Pac fan wanting to take shots at the Mountain West and really sabotage them, to definitely take notes. But if you just start writing letters to Trump asking for him to move the Air Force to the American, that'll blow up the MOU. Executive order tomorrow. It could happen. I'm just saying.
That's the way to actually. I'd be happy about that, honestly. So, to be honest with you, if this whole fight was over, we just had one stupid conference, and then Wyoming and San Jose were.
UNLV's in the Pac-12. Everyone
exactly. Then life is good. Then we don't have our cocky, arrogant AD down there trying to do a measuring contest with the Pac-12 ADs. Yeah. So. All right, man. Thank you so much. I want to keep this under an hour, so I'm going to close it out there. But thank you so much for jumping on. I appreciate you. Make sure you're subscribed to him, and I hope you have a good one, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you too, brother. Have a good one.
All right, let's run, folks. See ya.